Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kimberly, and I am the owner of So Sassy Stitcher in Northwest Arkansas. I am working on the bench pillow from Block of the Month from Riley Blake Designs. This month is Oh My Stars. It's the 4th of July one, so lots of red, white, and blue and stars. And when I opened it up, everything looked pretty good. I did notice one main thing is that the picture for one of the fabrics was incorrect. And so when I was looking at it, and before I cut it, I looked through all of my instructions before I cut and make sure I kind of know what goes where so that I can see if I want to change anything on how it's cut. So the Navy Dapple Dot, which is actually this guy right here, the picture shows the binding fabric. And so you want to make sure that you're cutting the correct fabric for that one. The other thing that I did is for these red star pieces, they're actually flying geese. They have you do the cut and flip method like you're gonna do on the stars, the smaller star blocks here. However, I prefer the Eleanor Burns method, and thankfully they actually give wide enough pieces of fabric to begin with to make that happen. So if you know what the Eleanor Burns method is and how to do it, what you need to cut instead of on the red, instead of the 3.5-inch squares, you're going to cut one 9-inch square. Okay, that will still be your F. For the white Star Seasonal Basics one, the white with the red and blue stars on it, instead of the 3.5 by 6.5-inch rectangles, you are going to cut one 7.5-inch square. And I like this method for two reasons if you've never done it before. Number one, it uses less fabric. So instead of doing all of these rectangles individually and cutting off these big triangles and having that waste, you don't have very much waste with these. And like instead of these all being big squares that I'm cutting off almost half of that square for these triangles, there's very minimal waste on these. The other thing is they end up perfect and they don't end up wonky. So when you do these, if you've ever done the Eleanor Burns method, you need to have the right ruler. And so it's Quilt in a Day. They have these flying geese rulers, and I'll move that so that you can see that a little bit better. This one is the 3 by 6 finished geese. So these actually right now raw are 3.5 by 6.5. Finished size, because we're adding in the seam allowance, they will finish 3 by 6. So when you do these, you're gonna stack the larger red one face up and then the smaller white one face down, right side down, so the right sides are together on top. And you're gonna basically center that white one on top. Then you're gonna stitch across the diagonal, 1/4 inch on either side of the diagonal, cut that apart, iron them open towards the red. Then you're going to lay them together so that the colors are opposite. And there's really good instructions online. Eventually I will put one out there as well. And then you do the same thing. You stitch it diagonal across those colors, 1/4 inch on either side, iron those open, cut them apart, iron them open. They only work if you have either the same on each side or opposites, because they will end up, as you can kind of see with my seams, they end up opposite, if you can see that, when you do them. And so this is really nice because a lot of times when you do that stitch and flip method, these will go a little bit off of square. And so we want to make sure as much as possible that we end up with a nice square rectangle and not a trapezoid or anything like that. So the Eleanor Burns method is a really great way to make that happen. Again, thankfully they gave us enough width to be able to do that. So if you want to do the Eleanor Burns method, 9-inch of the red instead of the 8 3.5-inch squares, and then of the white stars, 1 7.5-inch square rectangle for that. And that will give you enough for 4 of these flying geese. So less fabric usage, you get more scrap to do some other fun project with. Okay, now, so this is going together pretty well. You're gonna make 5 different star blocks that are 6.5-inch. This one's gonna go in the center with these flying geese on all sides of it to make another star. So it'll be kind of a star and a star with these squares in the corner. So we'll put this together like a 9 patch. Same with these inner or the smaller stars. You're gonna do that. So make sure that you get the correct white with the correct square. So I really had to think about which small square I was gonna put with the bigger square to do my stitch and flip to make sure that I got it correct. So when you do that, just make sure that you're following their pattern and going along and doing that. So you're just gonna take these and do stitch and flip. You can't really do the flying geese method or anything like that on these, unfortunately. You just have to do the stitch and flip method, whichever is your favorite way to do that and to get them right. And so I've got this one that's gonna go in the center of the other star with my flying geese. So it's got the navy with the white dots, the white with the red and blue stars with a red center. Then I have white with the navy center star. I have white with the red. I have red with the white, and then I have the navy with a white star. The ironing instructions for these are pretty good. I haven't found an issue with them as of yet. When I am putting these together in a regular 9 patch, their ironing instructions allow a nice snuggle seam. So you've heard me talk about the snuggle seams before. So they're opposite seams. We're not ironing these open. We're ironing them to one side. Makes our seams a little stronger. And then they snuggle together. So you get nice points when you put them together. And that's what those snuggle seams do for you. So make sure that you are following those ironing instructions so you can get that pretty snuggle seam. The other piece that we're gonna do is the stripes. And when I cut my fabric, because I was cutting the wider pieces for the red and the white with the stars, so these 2 pieces, I cut that piece off first. So if we look at a regular fabric with the fabric, and we had, you know, on the red, I think they gave us 10 inches. I squared up the one side, opened it up, and cut off my 9-inch block off of that one end. Because with these, it says to do with the fabric for that 2.5-inch strip for these. Well, if I did that first, then I wouldn't have enough for either of those Eleanor Burns blocks. So I made sure I cut that first. The nice thing about these guys is there's 4 6.5-inch pieces. So I really only needed 26 inches plus a little bit for squaring up. So I didn't need that full width of fabric. So I could cut off that 9 inches. Then I cut my strip and then continued to follow the instructions because I had excess. When they tell you to cut those strips, you generally aren't, especially for a project this size, you're generally not using that whole thing. So I will cut like one strip, cut what I need out of it, see if I can get anything else so that I'm not wasting another cut and I get bigger pieces left over. So if you're gonna do the Eleanor Burns method, make sure that you cut those pieces off with the fabrics first. You don't have to cut the whole strip that width, just cut it off of that end and then cut the rest of it. I hope that makes sense. So you just sew these together. Make sure that you're ironing towards the white, which is a little backwards from what we normally would do. However, that is so that when you put them with your stars, that you can get, because we're gonna iron out towards these blocks that are not pieced, we can get those nice snuggle seams with these guys as well. And so that's gonna match up those seams really nicely. If you feel the need to pin these, you can totally pin these with something this short. I generally don't, but feel free to do so if you need to. You can use a regular straight pin or you can use the Wonder clips. So even though we don't normally iron towards the light color, we are doing that on these guys. The other thing that I did, which we all make mistakes, and this is how I fixed it. So I sewed the red to the white, and then I'm doing multiple steps at a time. So I'm cutting off my, trimming off my corners for my stars. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna cut 6.5, and I cut one off, and then I'm like, oh, wait, oops, there's supposed to be another piece on there. So what I did is I took this blue strip, put that one on there, and then just 1/4 inch down from that, added my next one because I had plenty of that blue. That one was a full length one instead of a short one because I didn't need it for the flying geese. So you can, if you make mistakes, like you can figure out how to work with it and still make it work. But when you cut these, once you have them all together, 6.5 inch strips, so that you should have a 6.5 inch block to match these guys. And then from there, like it's just putting it together, following the instructions that, you know, this one has actually gone together, I think, easier than the rest of them, as long as your stitch and flip method for those stars goes okay. So again, they are smaller pieces, so just make sure that you're marking those corner to corner and sewing a scant inch towards the side that's going to get cut off, so that it will flip nicely and you still have that 1/4 inch seam without losing any of that depth in your corner. I hope this goes really well for you. Oh, I wanted to show you, I picked up at my local quilt store today. This is actually a Riley Blake fabric that I found, that is kind of the red, white, and blue, in a slightly different line, but it's America the Beautiful line of Riley Blake fabrics. And so I thought it actually went pretty nicely. It's little quilt pinwheels. And so that will actually be the back of my pillow when I get it done. And so that was kind of fun to find. I've got it all ready to stitch together and get on the back when I get this put together and quilted, which is gonna be a little while yet. I hope that this project goes really well for you. It is a faster project than some of the other ones because there's not quite as many little teeny tiny pieces. Happy quilting, happy May. We're finally getting some warm weather. I don't think I'm quite ready for summer, but it is what it is, and I will just spend some time in the AC. So happy quilting, have a fantastic day.